Good evening, and welcome to the latest edition of Cluster that happened in real estate in the last week. Our top stories tonight are the least popular vice president in the history of the country has dropped official policies 3 days before the Democratic National Convention. New rules for real estate commissions have officially rolled out nationwide. Housing starts dropped 14% last month, and builder confidence is at an 8-month low. And my personal favorite, a Missouri woman has been arrested for trying to steal Graceland, Elvis's childhood home. All of this and more coming up after the break. I know, groceries are so expensive right now. Seriously, the only thing I can afford is like a protein bar. I bet this chewing is so loud. Hopefully I don't have chocolate chip in my teeth. And we're back. VP Harris has finally proposed some actual policies for her next 4 years in office, like fix the terrible economy that her previous almost 4 years in office caused. It's brilliant when you think about it. Cause the problem, then fix the problem, but only if you elect her back into office. As of this moment, you still can't find the actual policy on her website. Every page on her website is asking for donations or selling some amazingly clever merch, much like this baseball hat. VP Harris, the kinda sorta Democratic presidential nominee who wasn't voted the nominee by a single American voter, announced at a presentation in Raleigh, North Carolina last Friday that she was going to build 3 million new homes and give $25,000 in down payment assistance to certain first-time, first-generation homebuyers. Harris shared very few details as to where that $25,000 down payment assistance would come from, but there are 3 very likely sources. Number 1 would be the American taxpayers. Yes, the current homeowners get to pay for people who are not yet but want to become homeowners. Option number 2 is to just print more money because, hey, what's the benefit of owning your own printing press if you don't just print more when you run out? That's what we've been doing for the past couple of years, and look how well that's worked out for us so far. And option number 3 is to just reallocate money from a surplus in an existing department that's not really being used and just transfer it and use it to this instead. I know, like that would ever happen. Vice President said, "As president, I will work in partnership with industry to build the housing we need, both to rent and to buy. We will take down barriers and cut red tape, including at the state and local levels. By the end of my first term, we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class." Meanwhile, homebuilder confidence is at an 8-month low. Carl Harris, assuming no relation, the chairman of the National Association of Home Builders, recently stated that the only way to curb the excessively high cost of building a home is to get rid of all of the government regulations and fees that are involved with building a home. Some have said that building a home in California, 50% of the cost is due to regulatory practices and fees and building permits and whatnot charged by the government. But surely the additional cost is not being added to the sales price of the house, right? That doesn't make sense. The builder should have to incur all of those costs, but keep the cost of the house low so that the consumer doesn't have to pay more for it. It's only fair that the greedy builder take on all of those additional fees and not pass that along to the consumer. Vice President Harris is proposing 3 million new housing units be built in the next 4 years and has proposed $40 billion to help find new solutions to address housing inventory shortages. In a shocking turn of events, the Harris Walls team offered no explanation of how any of this would work. Hey, can you bring the printing press back? I wasn't done with it yet. Which brings us to the new Real Estate Commission rules that rolled out as of August 17th due to the National Association of Realtors' proposed settlement. August 17th was the national absolute drop-dead deadline for any member of NAR, any realtor, to offer any sort of compensation to the buyer's brokerage on the MLS, the multiple listing service. The personal injury attorney who represented the plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit against NAR along with multiple large brokerages throughout the United States argued that it was unreasonable for the seller to pay a commission to their brokerage and to also pay the brokerage that represents the buyer. What he failed to mention was that the buyer is the one paying both sides of the commission. The buyer is the one bringing all of the money to the transaction to buy the house in the first place, and out of the proceeds of the sale come the expenses. Luckily, mainstream media and very reputable programs such as this one have been shouting from the rooftops since March 15th when the proposed settlement terms were announced that house prices were going to plummet and 6% commission was a thing of the past. Even though they never had to pay a 6% commission, commissions were always negotiable, and every real estate agent in the United States is free to charge whatever the heck they want for their professional services. So we absolutely expect to see the cost of housing come down, since all of the sellers who are no longer paying the buyer brokerage commission will clearly be passing that savings along to the buyer. Because why would they want to keep that extra profit for themselves? No, they're going to drop their asking price since they have less in fees incurred on the cost of the sale. Along with the commission rules, buyers will now be required to sign an agreement to see the inside of any house that is for sale. This means that any buyer who is actively house hunting to purchase a new home will need to choose a real estate agent to show them that home and put their terms in writing before opening the front door. There will be multiple forms that the buyer and the agent can choose from. There will be an exclusive right to sell, a non-exclusive right to sell, a form that is for one specific house only, or perhaps for a very short duration of time, such as 24 hours only. A buyer will not need to sign an agreement if they are going to an open house which is being held by the listing agent who is representing the seller of that house for sale, nor will they need to sign an agreement if they call the name and number on the sign in the front yard and are shown the house by the listing agent once again. Proponents of these rules claim that there is no need for buyer's agents anymore. With the invention of this amazing thing called the internet, buyers can find all of the houses they want on their own.
Hey, are you just coming in? But how will they know what to do from there if they want to make an offer on a house?
Well, the listing agent can't give them any advice unless the buyer hires the listing agent to also represent them in the transaction. And most listing agents do not feel like it's a great idea to represent the seller and the buyer on the same transaction, because you are actively working against each other's interests.
So they just hire an attorney to write up the offer,
Sure, they can hire an attorney.
and the attorney would be able to advise them on what a competitive offer is?
Well, no, the attorney is not an expert on market conditions. The attorney can't show them the house. The attorney can't tell them what to offer. The attorney can't tell them what terms would be most advantageous for the seller and therefore most likely to get the seller to accept the buyer's offer, especially in a multiple offer situation if many people are bidding on the same house at the same time.
So if the listing agent is not paying the buyer's agent fee, kind of like a finder's fee for them to bring the buyer, then the seller is probably going to drop the price of the house that much, right?
You stop asking me all of these questions. Who let this guy in here? Security! And now on to my favorite story of the week. A Missouri woman was arrested for trying to steal the deed to Graceland, Elvis's iconic and childhood home in Memphis, Tennessee. Lisa Janine Findley, who has so many aliases, I can't possibly list them all here. This video would be 45 minutes long. She faces up to 20 years in jail for mail fraud and a minimum of 2 years for aggravated identity theft. It's funny how aggravated identity theft only has a 2-year minimum sentence, but 20 years for mail fraud. Findley allegedly posed as at least 3 different individuals affiliated with a fictitious lender that does not exist. She claimed that Lisa Marie Presley, Elvis's only daughter, who unfortunately is now deceased and therefore cannot defend herself, had taken out a loan prior to her death and put up Graceland as collateral. After stating that Presley failed to repay the debt, Findley also allegedly falsified loan documents and forged Presley's signature along with that of a notary. She then allegedly falsified a deed of trust with the registrar's office in Memphis, allegedly published a fraudulent foreclosure notice in the newspaper, and announced that the lender was going to auction Graceland off to the highest bidder. Upon the death of Lisa Marie Presley, Graceland passed to her heirs, who then caught wind of this scheme and sued the non-existent lending company in an effort to prevent the foreclosure and the auction of Graceland on the courthouse steps. But here's where the story gets really good. Once Findley was caught in this entire scheme, she wrote a letter to the Presley family and the Tennessee courts and claimed that a Nigerian identity thief was responsible for the entire thing, and clearly she had nothing to do with it. Tune in next time for more of the same, only slightly worse. I'm Karen Carr, and we'll see you next time if the market hasn't collapsed by then. And cut!